They wanted to manipulate the brain of the people and the soul to change into a Maoism that they are doing in China, and to live their Islamic or faith or something like this. So I think this is a very actual case, and the Iranian society and Iranian nation also very much touched by this. I see the Iranians in media, they always say that if this regime of Iran, which is so-called Islamic Republic, if they care about Muslims, why don't they care about the Muslims of the Turkistan, Ilgur people, and the Kyrgyzstan people? Why they swallow what China is doing against the Muslims? So this is a hypocrisy. That means that there is nothing to do with the religion as such. It is a very dirty game that the dictators are playing, and regardless of their faith in God or not God, Mao or Muhammad or Quran or the Red Book, and they are all on the same side on the wrong side of the history, as we are on the right side of the history. I'm very happy to see you, and I am delighted to participate in your gathering today.
Very good. We are just, I think that we will start exactly at 4 o'clock. I suppose that the recording is already on, but we might always, we will tape the webinar, and these minutes can always be withdrawn, but it's already live. I think that those who are in YouTube can already see us, all of us. So I'm just taking some minutes. I want to really to get only in time, only at 4 o'clock, and we are waiting as well for the member of the European Parliament, Ryszard Czarnecki. He's not there yet, but I suppose he is getting soon. I see that the sign is already opened, and he will be the first one to speak, because unfortunately he will not be able to join us for the whole of the webinar. He has to leave immediately. He is in Poland, and he will have to travel to another city. So you will be the first. Then I would give the floor to Mr. Salih Hudayar, Prime Minister of the government in exile of East Turkestan. He is speaking from Washington, D.C. And then I would give the floor to Ambassador Perviz Khazai. He is a representative of the National Council of the Iranian Resistance, of the Resistance of Iran. It's the way that it is, NCRI. Sometimes I reverse, but that's the way it is. NCRI, the National Council of Resistance of Iran. And then we will have the final speaker will be Dr. Siegfried O. I would appreciate if you could keep your speeches for 10-15 minutes for allowing some discussion. Questions can be put to us via YouTube. This is the way that we are now working. We did work with another platform. Oh yes, so good afternoon.
Hello, Paulo. Nice to hear you.
Very nice seeing you.
My great pleasure.
We were together in the European Parliament a long time ago. He's still there. I'm not. He's still there, and both of us we know each other very well because of the Iranian resistance, because we were both supporters of the Iranian resistance, and we were always getting together there, although we are from different countries and from different political groups. But we got, I think, a very solid friendship thanks to the Iranian resistance. It's one of the things I owe to the Iranian resistance, and I would like to point this out. Okay, so there is only 1 minute to go, and this is a new webinar from South Asia Democratic Forum. This webinar is titled The Sino-China Alliance, Global and Regional Impacts. The webinar is using a new platform. It's using StreamYard. That is a platform that is using, not necessarily, but we are using YouTube. So people can follow us through YouTube. They can formulate questions that will be addressed to us, to the organization. And we will try to answer these questions in the end. We will have with us today 4 guest speakers. The first speaker is the member of the European Parliament, Ryszard Czarnecki. He is a member from Poland in the European Conservatives and Reformists. As a second speaker, we will have Mrs. Salih Hudayar. He is a political leader and the Prime Minister of the government in exile of East Turkistan. He is in Washington. He was born in East Turkistan, but he did grow in the United States. He founded the East Turkestan National Awakening Movement, and he became one of the most prominent advocates of the causes of his land. He is going to speak of the massive violation of human rights that is occurring right now in East Turkestan. The East Turkestan government in exile presented in The Hague in the beginning of this month complaint for genocide against China, genocide and other crimes against humanity. It's a very, very serious and important complaint, and I think that for once the world seems to have woken up, and we saw a lot. At last, we saw a lot in the international press of what is going on with in East Turkestan. Secondly, we will have Mr. Perviz Khazai. He is former ambassador of Iran in the Nordic countries of Europe. He has been trained as a diplomat within the French Ministry of Foreign Affairs and in the United Nations in Geneva. And he has been, shortly after he left the post of ambassador, he has been a representative of the National Council of Resistance of Iran in the northern countries of Europe. And lastly, we will have Dr. Siegfried O. He is the Director of Research of South Asia Democratic Forum. And he will make a political analysis of this alliance that the Iranian regime leaked into the international press for reasons that he will explain to us. But anyway, shows that the dictatorships and autocracies of our world are learning how to cooperate ones with the others. And I think those who love freedom and democracy have to do the same. They have to cooperate more and more ones with the others. So without further delay, the floor is of Mr. Ryszard Czarnecki, please.
Thank you, Paulo. Thank you very much indeed. First of all, for the invitation. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, I'm very pleased to be able to take part in this prestigious and important webinar, which takes place with the participation of influential politicians and analysts, people in Washington, Brussels, Warsaw, among others. I greet everyone from Warsaw, the capital of Poland. Let me remind you that a very important conference devoted the Middle East with particular emphasis on the future of Iran was held in our city a year ago in Warsaw. It was attended by representatives of several dozen countries, including key politicians and representatives of administration from the United States of America, but also many members of the governments of Arab states. Tehran criticized the Polish, our authorities for organizing this conference. However, we felt that it was worth talking about possible political and peaceful scenarios. I'm glad that Poland, my country, has launched such an initiative. I would like also to remind you that for the last 2 years, Poland was a member of the United Nations Security Council, and we also dealt with the Middle East, Iran, with a media mandate. It's clear that under the 45th US President, Mr. Donald John Trump, Washington's policy towards Tehran is different, more offensive than during both terms of former President Barack Obama. We also see that there has been a fairly clear division here between the United States and part of Europe, western part of Europe, especially Germany, France, Poland, and our region of Europe, Middle East Europe, being in the same European Union with Germany and France, but our position on Iran that is closer to administration of the White House, not Berlin or Paris. My question is, American foreign policy will change after the November US presidential election. If President Trump wins, I think nothing will change. If the president is someone else, Washington will rather control its policy, continue policy towards Russia, and we will agree here, but it may change. It may change its policy, both in terms of the Middle East, Iran, and various international organizations and international trade agreements. Poland, my country, has just presidential election behind it. President Andrzej Duda won then again, and the ruling party also, of which I am a member of the board, last year won the parliamentary election again. So our foreign policy will certainly not change. Finally speaking, we talked about Iran in the context of the United States of America, Western Europe, and our region of Europe with Poland, but also China. Also, China has a very active policy towards Iran. It's a very important, not new, but very important element of current political scenario. And it will be more and more important, in my opinion. Finally, I hope this webinar will be an opportunity to exchange opinions and maybe also to provide some forecast for the future. I wish you all a fruitful debate. Thank you very much indeed for your attention.
Thank you very much, Richard. I know that those who are struggling for human rights against oppression and for justice, for denouncing genocide, can count on you. The Iranian people did count on you, and I am sure that those who are raising now their voice in East Turkestan will also count with your support in the European Parliament, and I think this is very important. Thank you very much for your contribution. I know that you are pressed to leave immediately because you have other engagements out of Warsaw and you have to leave immediately. I hope you will have a safe trip. Take care with the traffic. Sometimes it's better to get a bit late but safe. And without further delay, I would now pass the floor to Mr. Salih Hudayar. We are absolutely very, very grateful. We are very honored for your presence. We hope the best for you and for your people, and we hope that you will continue with the same strengths you have shown up to now. Please, the floor is yours.
Firstly, I want to thank the South Asia Democratic Forum for organizing this great webinar, and I especially thank Mr. Paulo Casaca for this opportunity. As far as East Turkestan, in order to really understand the current atrocities, we have to look back at history, understand where East Turkestan is. East Turkestan, like Tibet, was an independent country of its own, but in 1949, the Chinese communists, with the help of the Soviets, invaded and occupied East Turkestan. It's known to much of the world as Xinjiang, which is a Chinese colonial term meaning the new territory. According to secret communication between Stalin and Mao, the documents which had been leaked by the Wilson Center, the Chinese population in East Turkestan at the time that China occupied East Turkestan was less than 6%, versus over 90% Turkic population, including Uyghurs, Kazakhs, and others. And it was actually Stalin who recommended to Mao that he needed to take over East Turkestan and repopulate, change the demographics to where it's at least 30% Chinese, in order to effectively control East Turkestan. So we have to look at the strategic importance of East Turkestan to China, because this plays a strategic role, a crucial role in why the oppression, why the genocide is happening. East Turkestan is roughly 1/5, slightly a little less than 1/5 of China's current territory. It's rich in natural and mineral resources, and it serves as a gateway for China to Central Asia, the Middle East, and ultimately even into Europe. For much over the past 7 decades, the international community failed to address this issue, and especially post September 11, China has been using the war on terror to effectively engage in a war against Uyghurs and other Turkic peoples in East Turkestan. This also is part of China's One Belt and One Road initiative, currently known as the Belt and Road Initiative, which is effectively to achieve the Chinese dream, which is ultimately global dominance in the spheres of economy, political, and military. The Chinese government over the past decade has been, even prior to that, has been backing repressive regimes across the world, not limited to North Korea, Iran, Pakistan, among others. In recent years, post-2017, China has been locking up millions of Uyghurs, Kazakhs, and other Turkic peoples in concentration camps. And now many people think it might be because of their ethnic identity, or it might be because of their religious identity, which is true to a certain extent. But the real issue is that China fears, the independence of East Turkestan, East Turkestan regaining its independence. And this is because there's no way to look at someone and, see if they have pro-independent sentiments, to measure if they have any pro-independent sentiments. The Chinese government came up with 48 different reasons, ranging from having traveled abroad, having engaged in religious activities, having engaged in political activities, having contacts overseas, and others, to justify, locking these people up in concentration camps. In fact, not stopping there, the Chinese government forcibly collected the DNA samples of 36 million people in East Turkestan, according to Xinhua, which is Chinese state media. When looking at the Chinese national defense strategy over the past few years, we can see that East Turkestan is one of their top defense goals is to prevent the independence of East Turkestan. The atrocities that are taking place in these camps are not simply to re-educate these people or vocational training, as the Chinese government claims, but it is political brainwashing. It's filled with torture. People are being in the camps, are going through physical and psychological torture, forced medication, forced starvation. In many instances, there are organ harvesting. In fact, the Chinese government has been forcibly secretly transferring thousands, if not tens of thousands of Uyghurs out of East Turkestan into Chinese provinces near, for example, Heilongjiang, which is near the Korean border. And Korea, that's because Korea is a big market for organs. They're also transferring them to other places in China, like Henan, where there are 5 hospitals that have been implicated by researchers for organ harvesting. 500,000 Uyghur and other Turkic children have been forcibly separated from their families and sent to state-run boarding schools. Some of them have been given away for adoption to Chinese families, despite their parents and their families are still alive in many instances. There's forced marriages of Uyghur women, Uyghur and other Turkic women, to Chinese men. And this is all a bid to ultimately eradicate the future of East Turkestani existence, the existence of the Uyghur people. For much of the past decade, I mean, for the 7 decades, the international community failed to raise this issue. Right now, this issue is being led by the United States, especially since the Trump administration came to power here in the United States. They have been actively raising this issue both at a national level and at the international level. However, many countries around the world are still reluctant to speak out against these atrocities, especially Muslim majority countries. And mind you, here the Uyghurs and other Turkic peoples of East Turkestan are mostly Muslim. And when asking why this is happening, it's due to China's economic power. China has effectively bought off the silence of the international community. Through the Belt and Road Initiative, they've invested hundreds of billions of dollars into countries across the Middle East, across Africa, and even into Europe, effectively silencing their response on the issue. Right now, we're trying to address this situation. As Paulo mentioned earlier, we've submitted a complaint to the International Criminal Court to investigate and prosecute Chinese officials for genocide and crimes against humanity. Other things that the international community can do is, firstly, recognizing the atrocities as what it is. It's a genocide. It's no longer a cultural genocide or simply simple human rights violations. The scale of the atrocities that's taking place in East Turkestan hasn't been seen since the Holocaust of the Jews and millions of others during the Second World War. Other things that other governments across the world can do is enact laws similar to the Uyghur Policy Act, which was passed by the United States Congress and signed into law earlier last month, while treating the East Turkestan issue on par with Tibet by recognizing East Turkestan as an occupied country and referring to East Turkestan by its original correct name, East Turkestan, and not by the Chinese colonial term, Xinjiang. Governments need to push back against China's claims of so-called internal affairs by recognizing this fact. The other things that they can do is to support efforts to hold China accountable at the international level. For example, governments and organizations can support our effort, our case at the ICC. They can raise the issue at the United Nations, especially members of the UN Security Council need to raise this issue and make it a forefront of the agenda of the UN Security Council. Lastly, governments, organizations, and others can support, by spreading awareness, support advocacy on East Turkestan through diplomatic and financial means. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that we had an impressive account of the situation. I would like to tell you that South Asian Democratic Forum stands by you, stands with all the people that are victim of such barbarities. Our complete solidarity with the Turkic peoples that have been subject to such hideous treatment in East Turkestan. I think that you mentioned some of the things that I find very important. Of course, that the destruction of the identity is really a crime. It's a genocide by itself. The fact that the Chinese authorities are changing in a very suspicious way the demographics and their accounts is also very, very suspicious. They are just making disappear. They are contradicting their early figures, saying that there are much less Turkic peoples than they themselves acknowledged before. This is really very, very suspicious. This issue of the the organ harvesting is absolutely atrocious, and a full investigation should be done as soon as possible. Thank you so much for sharing this situation with us, and hopefully we will be working together in the future to make our best to stop this situation. And now we will give the floor to our third guest, Ambassador Perviz in Khazai, that is going to speak about another violator, egregious violator of human rights, and exporter of terrorism and fanaticism for the whole of the world, Iran. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. At the outset, I would like to thank the South Asian Democratic Forum for inviting me to this very important gathering, and especially to you, Paulo Casaca, a friend of democracy and human rights for everywhere in the world. And you have been really a staunch fighter for these values, and I really value you and I commend you. And also, I'm very happy that I heard the speech of our very good friend, Salih Hudayar, whom I understand very well, because these dictators, these horrible ideological dictators, be it the Pope of the Middle Age, or Hitler, or Mussolini, or Hirohito, or Franco, or Khomeini, or Bin Laden, or al-Baghdadi, Stalin, and so on and so forth, and Mao, and they are all at the wrong side of the history, and they are the one who gather forces together to make an alliance in order to destroy our human rights, in order to destroy our values and democracies. So it's better sooner than later that we also, the democratic forces of the right and correct side of the history, we also gather forces together. The situation is reminding me of the period before the First World War, and the gathering of the bad forces against the democracies and human rights. So we have to be vigilant. We have to see what is really happening in Eastern Turkistan, which is really very sad, and I personally are very, very, very hurt by this process of indoctrination of this horrible regime in order to change the mindset on the people, in order to change their ideologies, religion, and try to inject Maoism, inject Stalinism in their brain. And that reminds me of the Dr. Mengele and the scientific people of the Hitler Nazism, that they were also doing the same thing in order to change the mind of people and the Jews, and try to destroy them, both mentally, if not physically, and putting them in gas chambers. So that is first part of my speech in really convey my sympathy and my support for our friend Salih Hudayar and his organization. We are all in the same boat. And then because now China is making an alliance with the Iranian regime, another horrible ideology, misusing of religion, misusing of Islam as a religion of 1.5 billion people on this planet, which has nothing to do with Islam as a religion. That's why in the middle, under the pillar, the main pillar of the Iranian resistance, the National Council of Resistance, is a Muslim organization, PMI, the Mujahideen Khalq organization, led by Mr. Masoud Rajavi, and also Mrs. Maryam Rajavi, a Muslim woman, she is actually the president elect of the National Council of Resistance for the period of 6 months after the downfall of the regime, in order to establish the first general election and the first voting for a new constitution based on the separation between the state and religion. So once again, we are all in the same side of the history versus those people who are on the wrong side of the history, and they are making alliance. So the China and Iranian regime are going to make they have embarked into adopting a sort of a project for an alliance, a strategic economic alliance for 25 years, 1/4 of a century, in order to let China to come and grab the situation in the Middle East, try to invade some of the Iranian places, some Iranian ports and islands, and even bring some soldiers in the region, and also besides with Russia, they could also use the Iranian military bases. So it is a horrible thing, which reminds me of the agreement between the Iranian government that almost 200 years ago with the Russian Tsar, in which we have given all 6 countries to the Tsar: Azerbaijan and Turkmenistan and Kyrgyzstan and Armenian and many other, Turkmenistan, to Russia Tsar. So this is a very horrible trend. Of course, China must be very aware that not to put all its egg in the basket of a horrible regime like the Iranian mullahs, Iranian Khomeini fascism caliphate, which is ideologically, strategically, economically, morally, and politically bankrupt, and they have no future. The Iranian people and resistance, they have already started making rebel cells inside the country and staging huge demonstrations against this horrible medieval regime. So China, out of desperation, I think they want to give a very wrong signal, because they are very much hated because of the East Turkistan, what they do there, because of the thing that they do in Hong Kong, and now they are poising also to attack Taiwan, and they are taking all these China sees territoriums by making artificial islands and put the continental shelf as a sort of frontier, maritime frontier of the China, and that is going to change the face of the world if they are going to succeed. But I'm sure that the international community, the right side of the history, democratic forces, they would not allow this. But the situation is very tense now, given the fact that 4 or 5 countries in the region, they are complaining at China, being it Taiwan and Philippines and Malaysia and Indonesia, and so on and so forth. So these desperate regimes like China, like Russia, like Iranian Islamic fascism, they are desperate, but they could be very dangerous. You know, I again remind us of the First World War and also the Second World War, because it was the fruit of the First World War. So out of desperation, out of bankruptcy ideologically, and out of hatred the people against them, they want to always embark into a foreign crisis, like George Orwell said in 1984 book, that the big brother needs a foreign enemy. So they want to frighten the world, and they could be dangerous. I'm sure that they have many weaknesses, this China and Iranian regime, and because the people, they don't like them, they hate them. But in the same time, we have to be aware because out of desperation, out of a lack of popularity, back against the wall, they could be very dangerous, and they could embark into a crisis which leads us like something like the First World War and also the Second World War. So we have to unite, and I'm seeing on behalf of the Iranian resistance, national capital resistance, and we have full sympathy for all the people in the world, especially the Eastern Turkistan and the Muslims who are under the severe harassment and Nazi-like, suppression of the people in that region. The same thing is happening also in our region in the Middle East. And I assure you that we will leave no stone unturned in order to join the international community, as Mrs. Rajavi said it time and time again, because we are in the same boat versus those people who want to destroy our civilization, destroy our democracy and human rights. So we are united. Let's be united again. Let's unite as we did against the Nazism, fascism, Hirohitism of Japan, and Frankism, Khomeinism, and the other Bin Laden and Daesh and ISISm. So this is a new enemy emerging again, and they ally themselves regardless of their ideology, regardless of the faith, because they are on the wrong side of the history. Thank you for giving me this opportunity again.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Khazai. I think this is really a very important moment where people of different sides of South Asia, and let me explain, because I did not do it in the beginning. And for our listeners, it is important to understand. We did start to focus on this Chinese-Iranian alliance in the beginning of this year, not now when the Iranian regime organized this leakage to some press in the United States. The leakage, well, fundamentally wanted to make propaganda of a lot of billions that will come to Iran, and that, according to them, will compensate the bankruptcy that we are seeing in the economy of Iran. But other than this propaganda move, we started exactly with a very important analysis from one of our members, Anna Madatali, that stressed the issue of the beginning of the present pandemic in Iran, that was started exactly by Chinese seminarians in the city of Qom. The international public opinion was filled with this idea. Oh no, the problem is that China is Islamophobe. So that's why they are suppressing, and they are killing, and they are forbidding the Turkic people of East Turkestan being Muslims. Well, it's not really like that. And the proof is that when this is a totalitarian regime like the Iranian one, then China is very keen on cooperating in the indoctrination of seminarians in Qom, in the university that is, by the way, responsible for the indoctrinations of tens of thousands of students that are sent to the whole of the world to try to impose the Iranian logic. So we started, looking at this alliance in very keen, with particular attention. And Dr. Siegfried O, he has been analyzing, he has been specialized in South Asia, but he has been looking at this issue as well, and he is going to tell us what are his findings on this Sino-Iranian alliance. Please, the floor is yours.
Yeah, dear Paulo, thank you very much for the opportunity to share my views with you, in particular with such distinguished co-panelists. As you mentioned, I will focus on the current negotiation on the Sino-Iranian alliance. Actually, already since 2016, Iran and China are exploring a strategic alliance. If implemented fully, it will not only reshape global geoeconomics and geopolitics, but has severe impacts on the Persian Gulf region and South Asia too. According to a recently leaked draft agreement, it amounts to an unprecedented economic, security, military, technological, and development cooperation between Tehran and Beijing. Considering the unfortunate international trajectories, especially China's new assertive foreign policy, there are growing concerns about the potential repercussion of a pact between two states known for their autocratic style of governance, bullying of neighbors, and suppressing people under their administrations. Therefore, it is crucial to understand the nature of the new evolving Sino-Iranian relation and related threats. By assessing the emerging alliance, following arguments can be made here from my side. Firstly, there are indications that the emerging Sino-Iranian deal will be made on the expense of the Iranian people and the overall national development of the country. This alliance will predominantly serve Chinese economic and strategic interests, as well as the corporate interests of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. The envisaged agreement will give Beijing tremendous influence in Iran. Iran domestic critics are stressing that the deal would give China control over how Iran spent its resources and that Tehran is selling its sovereignty to Beijing. There are also concerns that a partnership with Beijing will turn Iran into a Chinese colony. Here's a threat that the critical voices among the Iranian society lead to more repressive measures by the regime in Tehran. Secondly, the planned pact has the potential that China will extend its support for state terror in countries under its influence, as well as getting involved in the financing of international terrorism beyond the Sino-Pakistan nexus. There's a risk that Tehran, more concretely the Revolutionary Guards, are using the expected inflowing Chinese money for the revolutionary export projects, meaning the financing of global jihadism and anti-Semitism. Past experiences are showing that as soon sanctions were lifted, most notable is an example of the 2015 Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, which initiated an easing of the US sanction against Iran and subsequently to more trade and economic interaction. But the Revolutionary Guards absorbed the newly cash inflows and used it for the support for jihadist organizations abroad and new weapon systems. Here, the question appears how far China is able and willing to stop the Guards to finance terrorism and to build up its armory on the expense of the social and economic development of the country. From a comparative perspective, the way how Beijing gives diplomatic support for Pakistani-based terrorists and turning a blind eye on Islamabad's state sponsorship of cross-border terrorism, one must expect that Beijing will not intervene in the jihadist activities of the Guards as long as they protect Chinese interests and assets in Iran. Thirdly, there are clear indications that Tehran is already instrumentalizing the notion of a potential alliance with Beijing for propaganda purposes, which Paulo already highlighted. Here, the agreement is carrying a multifold message. It signals that Beijing has a confidence in facing up to Washington, As such, the agreement must be seen as an expression of the determination of China and Iran to defy the United States in general and Washington's sanction regime against Tehran in particular. Moreover, the deal is indicating that Beijing reached the point where it no longer regards the potential cost of countering US policy as too high. Also, Tehran wants to send a distinct message, concretely to propagate the notion that Tehran has now powerful friends and that the United States has been unable to isolate Iran. Fourthly, the pact, when agreed and implemented, will have severe regional implications, especially for India and Afghanistan. Beijing will most likely use its growing leverage in Iran to reduce Indian presence as much as possible, especially regarding the connectivity projects Chabahar Port and the Chabahar-Saridan Railway, India's envisaged link to the Afghan border. The highly likely loss of its leeway in Iran will also put New Delhi assets in Afghanistan at risk. From an Afghan perspective, it is a particular matter of concern that China will gain control of both Afghanistan transit routes to the Indian Ocean and the Persian Gulf, namely via Pakistan and Iran. Moreover, when Beijing will take control over the Chabahar port and other connectivity projects towards Afghanistan, there's a risk that Kabul will lose its status of being exempted from the trade-related sanction on Iran. This will have a severe economic impact on Afghanistan since Iran is the largest trading partner. There are observers claiming that the Iran-China deal are good news for Pakistan. Indeed, the fact that it seems that Iran engagement of arch-rival India is most likely experience a major setback creates undoubtedly some kind of Schadenfreude in Islamabad. But this Schadenfreude will be short-lived. Chinese infrastructure projects in Iran can be also seen as a threat for the China-Pakistan economic corridor and brief CPEC. If Islamabad will be not able to eradicate the endemic corruption, bureaucratic and managerial inefficiency, as well as to ensure a safe, enabling environment for the CPEC, Iran transit routes will serve as an alternative to bypass Pakistan. Moreover, due to the planned Chinese port project in Iran, Quadra might lose its status of being a Chinese flagship project. The increasing frustration in Beijing about Islamabad's mismanagement of several CPEC projects, combined with doubts if Pakistan's security forces are able to protect Chinese development projects, is contributing to the significance of Iran for China as a strategic partner. This finds further evidence in the increasing military, defense, and security cooperation between both countries. It is reported that Tehran is planning to build a military base in the Indian Ocean, which will be properly open for Beijing too. Furthermore, the leaked document also talks about a 5,000-strong detachment of Chinese forces to Iran, as well as shared development of defense industries, intelligence sharing, and joint military maneuvers. Furthermore, it is reported that the pact would also include the granting of basing rights for the PLA Navy and long-term leases of Iranian islands. All this indicates an evolving quasi-military alliance. There are no doubts that such measures are aiming to challenge the US maritime dominance and India's position in the extended region. To sum up, when a Sino-Iranian alliance materializes, Beijing will not only undermine the US sanction regime, but also give a new lifeline to the struggling Mullah regime who got under pressure due to the deteriorating social and economic condition in the country, as well as we heard already, the increasing opposition against this. In return, Beijing will get massive influence in this geopolitical critical country. As such, one must state that China is going to support the world-leading sponsor of global jihadism and anti-Semitism. In consequence, Beijing's narrative of being a misunderstood and well-intentioned global partner is completely failing, meaning the rest of this narrative, which was left after the Chinese role in hiding the origin of COVID-19 and large-scale campaigns to benefit from the weakness and distraction created by the spread of the pandemic. Also, the Islamic Republic of Iran is completely undermining its founding principle by ignoring the Chinese genocide among its Muslim population, which underlines the hypocrisy of the religious leadership in Tehran. One can conclude with the words of the Wall Street Journal that the exploring of a Sino-Iranian alliance is the latest in a series of moves that shows China as an irresponsible actor. Both governments, Tehran and Beijing, are revolutionary relicts known for lawless behavior, duplicity, bullying, domestic oppression and thought control, coercive economic practices, and grave human rights abuses. It was only a matter of time before these totalitarian twins found each other in a strategic partnership. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wolf. This is exactly so. I mean, China is known to be the sponsor of all the totalitarian, all the anti-democratic regimes around the world, and of course, this partnership was obviously going to happen because these are the two major totalitarian regimes in the world of our day. As you rightly said, I mean, Pakistan obviously is sidestepped as a second partner to China in the region. This was already obvious from the religious point of view, because whereas there are thousands of Chinese seminarians going to come to be indoctrinated in the totalitarian vision of the Iranian theocracy, none is going to Pakistan to no place whatsoever. Of course, that for those in India that believe that Iran could be part of a solution to Afghanistan, well, they are now getting to the facts, facing the facts. This is a major implication, exactly as you said before. I think that some of the plans that have been talked about, the military plans, are very, very concerning. I do remember to have said that I wrote when there was last year in 2019 the attack to 4 tankers in Fujairah, that the attack was certainly coming out of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard bases in Bandar Ijazk. And this is exactly one of the spots where apparently the Chinese want to make their military buildup. This military buildup is very significant. It shows that China is really in an expansionist logic. It really is a threat to the whole of the Middle East, and it cannot. One cannot just pretend not to see. I think that we have to understand that if we continue to act like this, what is now the present of East Turkistan risks to be the situation of many other countries. It's very important that some European countries, like France, that just a couple of days ago decided to ask for the United Nations to send an independent observation mission to East Turkestan. This is very important, but we should, on the one hand, take in consideration that a lot of the Turkic peoples of East Turkestan, as was exactly said by Mr. Hudayar, were moved to concentration camps away from the country elsewhere, namely to the border of North Korea. And so this has to be seen, and we have to monitor closely what is happening with the organ harvesting. I think that it is an urgency for the whole of the world to trace every organ that is used wherever, be it in Southeast Asia, be it in the so-called halal market in the Middle East, wherever. We have to trace it. We cannot expect the Turkic people that are under a terrible repression to be the ones who can make most of the proof of the scale of what's going on there. I think that the whole of the international community has to check very closely this situation. We are being followed by YouTube. We have loads of comments around here. I would perhaps ask Mr. Salih Hudayar if he wanted to make some clarification or some further points to the issues that were highlighted here during the whole of the discussion.
Thank you. Getting back to the Sino-China alliance, I mean, this is something that's actually not new. It's been ongoing for decades, really. China claims it's fighting against radicalism, and that's one of the bases, that the arguments that it uses to engage in this genocide against Uyghurs and other Turkic peoples in East Turkestan since 9/11. However, if you look at China's relationship with terrorist organizations like Al-Qaeda, it's a known fact that Al-Qaeda sold Tomahawk missiles that failed to explode back in 1998 and 1999 to the Chinese government. It's a known fact that the Chinese government has been helping the Taliban, assisting them both in terms of technology, but also military support via weapons. It's a known fact that China is supporting, various terrorist outfits through Iran, through the Iranian Revolutionary Corps in the Middle East. So the issue about what's happening in East Turkestan, it's again not about counterterrorism. It's not about it's simply an issue of human rights violations. It's a genocide based on geopolitical agenda of China. China wants to expand its influence, both not just its influence, but its territory. That's why you see border conflict erupting with India. That's why you see China expanding its military bases into countries, into areas in Southeast Asia. And I don't want to call it the South China Sea because it belongs to more countries than just China. So I prefer to call it the Southeast Asia Sea. This is all part of China's geopolitical agenda to ultimately replace the democratic worlds, the democratic ideas that are prevalent in the international community, and go towards a totalitarian, fascistic ideology, which we had seen, before during the World War II. If the international community fails to respond effectively at the current stage, it won't be long before China begins to, as we see it right now, they're building alliances with Iran, they're building alliances with other regimes across the world. It won't be too long before they actually engage in an activity like what Nazi Germany did by invading Poland. Poland, in this case, it could very well be Taiwan, it could very well be India. Only time will tell. But the international community must respond beforehand, before it's actually too late.
Absolutely, Mr. Hudayar. I think that you you made exactly the point that it's necessary to be done. The Iran itself, who is the mother of all the fanaticism, all the jihadism, never mind Shia or Sunni, this is not really the most important criteria. Actually, a constitution that highlights the role, the objective of jihad as its main jihad in the whole world, not only for Iran, but for the whole world. This country, for instance, it pretends that it is fighting terrorism when one of the factions of Al Qaeda that made as we know, splitted and then did not follow orders and started to be a problem. They had a quarrel with Iran, but from there they pretend to be going against terrorism, going against fanaticism and things like that. And some of the people in the West believe in these sort of issues. And China is doing the same thing. China is pretending that what it is doing in East Turkestan is to fight against jihadism, which is absolutely nonsense, as you mentioned very correctly. Nothing to do with it. Actually, the main victims of jihadism are Muslim people. This is something I did observe with my own eyes very much in Iraq. And this is something that everybody should be conscious. This is duplicity and hypocrisy. These totalitarian regimes care about power, nothing but power. They use ideologies as a tool, but power is their main aim. And so for the Iranian leadership, there is no problem at the same time that all the genocide made by China against people that are Muslim, for the vast majority of them, it is being done at the same time that Iran is saying, well, we make a big alliance with this country that is slaughtering Muslims, but we still pretend that we are defending Muslims worldwide, namely in Palestine. This is absolutely, it's unbelievable as some people, some observers give any credibility to this sort of claims. Obviously, this is nothing makes sense but power. Power is the only thing that matters for them. We are already over our 1 hour. We have really loads of comments. It's a bit difficult for me to see any question that I could address. I think that we passed very much the messages we wanted to. We are very grateful to member of the European Parliament, Mr. Czarnecki, to Mr. Hudayar. You are a very brave young man. Allow me to say that. You are a Prime Minister of the government in exile, but you are a very brave young man. I have a lot of admiration for you. And I do wish all the best for you and for the struggle of your people. I am very impressed after knowing you. To my very old friend, Perviz, Khazai, we have been together so many times. You have been always there. The Iranian resistance is something that is in my heart, is in my history, will certainly always remain there. And the liberation of Iran is really, I think, the most obvious way of changing completely the situation of we are facing in our world, and hopefully it will come sooner rather than later. Dr. Siegfried Wolf, thank you so much for your analysis. To all of you that sent us messages, that saw us, that followed us, thank you all. We will return now using StreamYard, this new way for a webinar in the end of August that will focus the environment in South Asia, problems with water management, with coal-based energy production, projects that are being promoted by the Belt and Road Initiative and that are tremendously negative for the environment of South Asia that we will be tackling. The precise date is not settled yet. We will inform you via our website, so please pay attention to it. Thank you all, and looking very, very much forward to see you in the near future. Goodbye.